Hey girl, hey! I am Jamia Ponder, host and creator of The Mrs. Beside, a safe space dedicated to the real ones standing beside and never behind. Girl, this life ain't no joke. It's time, let's air it all out. Trust me, I understand. Whoo child, I know it's a lot. All right. On our show today, we have the amazingly beautiful Mrs. Ashley Bailey. I am so happy to have you on the show today. Thank you so much for being here, Ashley.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, of course. So just a quick update. Ashley and I also met each other on a Facebook group. And I feel like just some of the things that, we've shared with each other and having two babies and working from home full time and having a husband and all of the things, right? I felt like that was sort of the piece that connected us because I mean, I don't know how you hold it all together, but when I had my babies at home and they were little and I was working full time, I felt like I was spinning. I was like, oh my gosh, like I wasn't getting enough sleep. I was constantly being pulled
There's a
on.
lot going on at all times.
Yeah. And my kids sleep through the night now, but, I don't feel like there's any lack of things to do, so to speak. But why don't you just give us a little bit about yourself and then we can sort of delve in here.
Yeah, so I am Ashley. I am the creator of Tennis Shoes and Tiaras. I have a fitness, motherhood, and lifestyle blog that I kind of like to do what I say in the pockets of my time because, like you mentioned, as a mom with two small children, you don't ever really have time to just sit down for 2 or 3 hours. So I might do 15 minutes here, 20 minutes there, whatever it takes. And that is my hobby. That's my baby. That's what I love to do and talk about and connect with people. But I also have a full-time corporate job in the business side of healthcare. I currently work in Medicare Advantage doing operations, which I won't bore you with the details, but that is what I do from 8 to 5. Like you said, I have two gorgeous, crazy, wild kids. Our daughter will be 3 in August, and then we have a 6-month-old as of tomorrow. And then I have my husband, of course, and we actually have been married for 6 years. We just had our anniversary. So we've been married for 6 years, together for 10 years. We've known each other for I guess I'm 30, so 15 years. So
half your life.
Yes, half my life, which is crazy to say.
Right.
It's we have grown together because we started the beginning of this journey before anything, pre-grad school, any of that. And I was just telling somebody we moved from New Orleans recently, and that was kind of our first where we, I guess, grew up because we moved there right after he finished medical school for his training, right after I finished graduate school. Literally, he graduated from school 1 week, we got married the next week, and then we moved to New Orleans where we knew no one for anyone a week after that. And we were there for 5 years. And I was just telling a friend how we that was all of our first, our first job. We got a puppy, we had our first baby. We grew up and started to really experience and figure out ourselves there. So that is a little bit about me.
Well, you actually touched on a couple of things that I want to touch on in terms of building community and sacrifices. So was it your husband's schooling that took you to New Orleans or residency that took you to New Orleans? How did that come about?
Yeah, so we actually moved to New Orleans for his residency. So I guess let's back up a little bit. Like I mentioned, we've known each other since I was a teenager, I guess since he was a teenager also. There's only a 3-year age difference between us. So we're both from North Texas, Dallas, but we really didn't hang out or anything until I went to Vanderbilt for undergraduate. And he happened to be starting medical school at Meharry there. I think my junior year of college. So we started talking to each other. Of course, one thing led to another. We started dating, the rest is history. But I would say I think it was after his first year, I was graduating from Vanderbilt. And that was kind of like I was graduating from undergrad. I had an undergrad degree in psychology. I originally wanted to go to medical school. And
Hmm.
then I had this internship my sophomore year. And I realized how much of medicine is not medicine anymore. Um, and I was like, I don't have time to do this. I will
Yeah,
just tell people what to do. And that's how I got to the business side. Because I was like, no one is telling me what to do. I will
correct.
be telling them what to do.
You got it.
But so my first big decision was really like, what am I going to do after graduate school? And I decided I wanted to stay. Of course, I'm young, like, he's my boyfriend, I'm in love, yada, yada. And so I wanted to stay in Nashville and like go to graduate school at Vanderbilt. But Vanderbilt was so expensive for
Oh, I
graduate
know.
school. And I'm
Hmm.
so blessed because my parents paid for me to go to Vanderbilt. So I
Nice.
did not have any loans from undergraduate, but they said for graduate school, you're on your own.
Hmm.
However, both of my parents are also retired military. And so my mom is from Alabama. So Alabama has some really great programs for veterans where I could go at zero cost tuition to any state school for
Wow.
graduate school. So like I had to make that decision then, like, okay, do I want to be with him and acquire all this debt, knowing that yes, the ultimate goal is for us to be together for forever. We're gonna already have all of this medical school debt.
That. Hmm.
Or do I like want to do the smart thing and we're gonna do the long distance thing? If it's meant to be, it'll be, and go to Alabama and do graduate school there and come out debt free.
Hmm.
So I decided to go to Birmingham, and it was like literally the best decision I could have made. I kind of got the best of both worlds. Like, I guess you could say I was single, quote unquote, because we were long distance.
Right.
So, like, I could do my own thing. He could do his own thing during the week, which I mean, in medical school, all he was doing was studying all the time anyway. So it
Correct.
wasn't like we were doing a whole bunch of stuff. Anyways, and then Birmingham and Nashville are only 3 hours away. So it was really quick to visit each other. So we
Yeah.
still saw each other a couple times a month. But like, I'm really thankful we got married when I was 24. So like, I was still pretty young.
Hmm.
And so that was really my time to like live on my own and experience myself and grow individually and, do all the things that in adulthood that I probably wouldn't have done if I would
Hmm.
have been right in Nashville, right next to him
Right.
the entire
Right.
time. So it was truly the best decision. I have some really great friends and relationships that I still keep in contact with. I found an excellent church that I've still never found another church as great as that. And like, I still literally listen to them online. We moved to New Orleans when he matched for residency. And New Orleans was never, like I said, both of my parents are retired Navy. And so
Hmm.
I've lived all over the world. I've lived all over the country. I've lived in Tokyo. I've visited everywhere. But I had never been to New Orleans. New Orleans was never on my to-do list of
Hmm.
places to go and see. And I remember when we packed up our little car, like right after we came back from our honeymoon, and we were driving from my parents' garage, like, and leaving to New Orleans because we had already sent everything. And I was
Hmm.
like literally like looking out the window crying because I was like, what
Oh
did I just do?
no.
But again, like, I really believe that whatever situation you're in, like, things are what you make it. If you have a bad attitude about it, then it's going to be an awful experience. If you have
Yeah.
a good attitude and make the best of it, it might not be your favorite thing, but you can have some learning things. And again,
Right.
like, I wound up loving New Orleans. If you ever see me on social media or anything, you know that I love New Orleans. I love, love, love Mardi Gras. Like, it is my most favorite time of the year. Like, I literally argued with my husband for weeks this year because he said that we could not go to Mardi Gras because we had a newborn, which he was probably correct because, that is where all of their outbreaks happened this
Correct.
year. So I'm glad that he stood his ground for that. But I love the city. I love the culture. I did not want to stay there for forever, but New Orleans is definitely different and it has a special, unique culture. And again, like, I have some really good friends and really good relationships from there. It was kind of where we did all of our first, like, we had our first puppy, first jobs out of graduate school, like, first baby. So we did all of that. We did it away from our families because both of us are very close to our families, but both of them live in Texas. So we kind of had to figure out everything by ourselves and together.
So
So
how did you build for those of you, or for other people who have to, metaphorically or actually really start over, right? So you are going to this unfamiliar place. You have, this new husband. You guys are still trying to figure each other out, right? So how do you really build a community? Because a lot of, like you say, a lot of firsts really happened there, and that was sort of your breaking experience, your baseline. So as you're figuring out how to be a wife, then you have to figure out how to be a mom, and still balance being a working professional and all the things that sort of happen in that same area of time and space.
So, I mean, I think part of it, as I mentioned, was I grew up moving a lot of different places because my
Gotcha.
parents were retired military. So when we moved probably every 2 or 3 years until I was in middle school. When you move for the military, you don't move over summertime. Like,
Hmm.
it's not a convenient time. You move in the middle of the year, like everybody already has their friends. And you realize quickly, like, if you want to build relationships and not be lonely in this new place, you have to put yourself out there. And
Right.
again, like I did the same thing when I moved to Birmingham because I didn't know anybody there. But I literally just started, like, I started off, I guess, with just the people I knew at work. And so I was talking to them and they would invite me to things. And I'm really grateful for that. Like, I didn't think that we were ever going to be best friends or anything. Like, I liked them, there was nothing wrong with them. But we worked together. So I didn't think we were going to be best friends, but I wanted to hang out, meet new people, etc.
Right.
I love working out. And when I was in college, I started running long distance. So I started running half marathons.
Oh.
So I had a running group when I was in Nashville. I had a running group when I was in Birmingham. So I was trying to find a running group in New Orleans. So
Hmm.
I like looked online and I went by myself to a running store. I remember it was like a couple, like maybe a month or so after I moved there. And one of my closest friends who only lived there for a year, the first year I was there, and then she moved to Atlanta. Like, we are
Hmm.
still very good friends. She had actually done the exact same thing. We moved to New Orleans around the same time and both like randomly went to this running group and met each other. So I think it's really just putting yourself out there. Like, if you're staying at home, you're not going to meet anybody.
Right.
So whatever your hobbies is, whether that's working out like it was for me, I joined different organizations, went and tried churches. I was open to meeting my coworkers. Like, you have to put yourself out there. You have to recognize that no, everybody is not going to be your best friend, but I mean, it's just like dating. Like, you still are going to date somebody and see if like you guys are a good match.
Oh,
At
right.
least most people are. Like, but that doesn't necessarily mean the first person is going to be, your forever.
Correct.
So yeah, just being willing to put yourself out there, I think, is the key, which when I talk to a lot of women, sometimes like that's the thing, they will say like, oh, I don't have any friends,
Hmm.
I'm so lonely. But like, you have to put yourself out there. And I get it, it's scary because I am not naturally an extrovert.
Right.
I just have forced myself to adapt based on my life circumstances.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. With growing up, I didn't, well, we moved every couple of years, but as far as I remember, we didn't move it, in the middle of the school year or anything like that. And we weren't in the military, but it did come with a certain level of adaptability, right? So you're in a brand new school, whereas people sort of, they go to kindergarten through 12th grade in the same
Right.
school. I didn't have that experience.
Right.
So it kind of served to, both of our benefits when you move somewhere completely new. And we upped and moved to Chicago. I knew no one, but,
Mm-hmm.
even, well, today's technology and online stuff make it a little bit easier, right? So you can join affinity groups and all of these things, like you said, running groups to find people with like interests and stuff like that. So I think that's awesome. And it's a great tool to use because you can feel, sort of lonely or like one offs. And if you're stuck in the house, it can just breed all sorts of things,
Right.
and bring on things that maybe don't ordinarily need to be there. And you develop friendships. People tell you stuff you didn't know about that area. And, they give you good tidbits. I'm sure they gave you all kinds of restaurants to try and,
Right,
places
right.
to
And
go to
again,
avoid.
yeah, people have different purposes in your life. So I didn't go, I was open, but I didn't go with the expectation oh, this is going to be my new BFF.
Right.
Like,
Right.
I didn't completely write them off, but like I said, I was open to however that relationship developed.
Right. Correct. So I know now you said, so you guys are together through med school, and then obviously residency, and now he's in private practice, right? So
Yes.
you guys are not still in New Orleans. Where are you now?
So we are now in Houston. As I mentioned, but we're both from Dallas, North Texas. And our goal was we wanted to be back close to our families. We're both very close to our families. And like I said, even growing up moving all the time, I always had my family. Even if I was moving and meeting new people, I still
Right.
had my family. And then just as we were starting to have kids, we kind of wanted to be closer. Again, we were both fairly close to our grandparents and extended
Mm-hmm.
family. So we wanted our kids to have that same opportunity. So as we started looking at jobs, we looked in that area, but also we were open to other places. And it just so happened that Houston was the best fit for us. And so that's where we wound up, which it's gotten us closer. We still see both of our families regularly. It's only about 3.5 hours away.
Okay.
So again, you kind of get the best of both worlds. We get to do our own thing,
Mm-hmm.
but we can see them very easily.
Right.
And like I said, both of our families we see all the time.
And that's good, because you do need that support system. There's nothing like having, your mom close enough where you can get to her or vice versa, or your dad or whomever. So
Yes.
I think that's awesome. Do you feel like in any of those transitions, obviously you guys have had to make some hard decisions along the way, but do you feel like you specifically have had to make any sacrifices, or has it just happened to work out where both, the scenario is sort of mutually advantageous?
So I definitely think just by the nature of his career has come first. Because I personally think regardless of what somebody's career is, when you're in a relationship or you're a couple, both parties, their career can't come first. One person has to be the one who's in drive and the other one has to
Mm-hmm.
be following. And it doesn't have to be stagnant where that's how it is. Things ebb and
Ebb and
flow and
flow.
they can
Yeah.
change. But for the time being, his career has been the priority because he has not had the flexibility. You were familiar with the process where he didn't get to choose where we went for training.
Right.
And even his work hours were very extended. So when I have been making career decisions, I've always had opportunities that pushed me forward. But I always, in the back of my mind, was okay, what is my availability and what's my flexibility? Because again, his career is priority right now. And I've also always been very transparent with my managers.
Mm-hmm.
As I've come, I'm not going in and having a word vomit and telling them all of my personal business, but I just have been transparent with my expectations and my
Right.
boundaries. And just so that there is, and making sure that when I am present, that I am giving 120%, so that when I am not available, then it's not so much an issue. And I think that really came into play once we had kids,
Mm-hmm.
because he works 60 to 80 hours a week.
Correct.
He's in an OR. If a child is sick, he can't leave in the middle of a surgery to go pick
Right.
up a child. So that typically falls on me.
Right.
He leaves, he's at work at 6 a.m. a lot of
Mm-hmm.
times. So I do in the morning when he's available. He does pick up. He's king of bath time if he's available and at
Mm-hmm.
home. But like I said, I've had to make sure that my professional decisions made sure that I was available. And right now I work from home,
Mm-hmm.
which I really have to work from home. I would not be able to work somewhere else in an office and not have the availability if I had a sick kid or if I had to pick up somebody early or whatever that may be.
Oh, I get it.
Which I love working from home. I like going into the office also, but I like having that flexibility. So I do, like I said, just by the nature, I do believe that his career has taken precedent, but I don't feel like my career is not important to him. Like,
Yeah.
he's very supportive. Like, if I want to make a change, or as I've applied for new jobs and positions, he's always been supportive. But like I said, I've always been mindful of, okay, here's where we are in life and here's what we need. So let me make sure I keep, like, I'm just not going to take a job that's traveling every single
Right.
week. Simple as that.
No, but that's real though. And so I think having that at the forefront of your mind can thwart a lot of feelings of like disappointment, like, oh, I have to, or it can still be there, right? But realizing that that is where you are right now. You have little people that depend on you, that, they can't just take themselves home, right? They can't check themselves out of school and just
Right.
drive home if they're not feeling well.
Yes.
And
Yes.
to your point, your husband can't just step out the OR. Oh, sorry. Can y'all just close Miss Johnson up real quick? I got to go pick up my kid from, from
Right.
school. Like, it just,
Right. And I do travel occasionally, but every single time I travel, I have to make sure one of our parents comes into town so
ma'am.
that they can do drop off and pick up, or be at least available for pickup if he needs it. But I will say, I don't have to travel that often, but every single time my boss mentions, like, oh, we might need to travel, I'm like, oh, I'm happy to do that. Like, oh, you want me to be in a hotel room by myself?
Take me.
Right.
Take me. Take me.
Sure, of course.
I know. I've had to I've not had to, but I've gone out of town a couple of times. But when I tell you that the instructions that I leave, like detailed instructions, and it's like their schedules were, well, of course, all of this was pre-corona, right? Because they're not doing anything right now. But the instructions that we have to leave are fairly detailed, and just all of the things.
Cooking dinners before you leave.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Yes. You guys can have the leftover spaghetti on Wednesday, but do not eat it past Wednesday. Thursday that's the deadline for it. There are hot dogs in there. There's buns on top of the refrigerator. Like,
yes,
chips.
Exactly.
All of the things. Okay. All the things. Yeah. No, I totally get it. And I've even gotten some comments before, like, oh, you don't have to worry about that or this because, your husband's a doctor. And it's like, okay. Yeah, you have no idea what we have to go through. But
I think a lot of people just don't, regardless of what somebody's career is. I think a lot, especially I think with social media, people make a lot of judgments about what they think people's lives are. And like, they just don't know what's going on. And so, like I said, regardless of if you're a physician, lawyer, like, you are bagging things at the grocery store, you don't know what goes on in people's individual homes. Simple as that. And people make a lot of judgments, especially now that they feel like they have peeks into people's lives with social media.
Right.
So that does not help.
It's like, oh, you're so lucky. It's like, I'm okay, whatever you say. You're going to think what you want to think anyway. And I can't sit here and try to itemize it out. But if you had a myth that you wanted to dispel about being married to a physician, what would it be?
Oh, wow. I think the first myth would be, a lot of people assume that just because you're a physician, you are wealthy, etc.
My goodness.
And I mean, I think there is a lot of systematic racism and advantages that people have had for generations. So, yes, if your family has been doctors for 3, 4, 5 generations and all of your schooling, et cetera, is paid for, then yes, when you get out of school, then you are set and ready to go. However, that is not the case, especially for a lot of minorities. Both of my husband's parents have college educations. My parents have college educations. However, he was the first person in his family. Well, his sister went to medical school also, but he was the first generation in his family to go to medical school. And medical school in general does not cost the same that it cost 20, 30 years ago. So when we graduated from medical school, then we came out with a significant amount of loans, which we understood what we signed up for. It's not an issue. But when you come out that far behind, it makes a difference. Plus, those first few years of training, you're not making any money.
Nothing.
I mean, you have probably about the equivalent salary of a teacher somewhere, which everybody knows that teachers, as important as their work is, do not get paid appropriately.
Mm-mm.
And you are now having that same salary, probably 4 or 5, sometimes up to 10 times the amount of student loans.
Oh my gosh.
As that teacher.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a little bit different. So people don't realize, and even once you get past that stage, like I said, my husband works 60 to 80 hours a week. A lot of times I'm doing things on my own, which again, I'm very blessed, and it doesn't bother me too much just because of my personality, and I've learned to adapt to it. But I mean, we spend lots of holidays where he is not available. He's not home.
Mm-hmm.
We've celebrated Christmas on Christmas Eve.
That's right.
We've done all of that stuff. So I don't think people realize the sacrifices and changes that different people go through.
Yeah, for sure. We've done the same, have had to restructure an entire holiday setting. Like, okay, well, we'll open gifts, the day before because he has to work Christmas Day.
Right.
But we'll open them that night because he won't get home probably till about 7 or 7:30 or so Christmas Eve. So I'll just make sure I keep the kids. There are all of the things, right, that you have to do to readjust and to adapt to this type of lifestyle. So that is a very common myth that we sitting on stacks and stacks.
Right. I'm looking for mine. I don't know where they are.
I'm just saying. I mean, maybe it's in my mattress. I don't know. I'm just telling you it's not in the account right now.
Right. And like I said, people have different backgrounds and life experiences. But I think when you are starting from the bottom, really, like I said, which is the case for a lot of minorities, and even, I mean, both my husband and I grew up middle class. So like our families are middle class. Like, so even then we are at an advantage compared to a lot of other people of color and Black people that we know that maybe they were not middle, like their families don't have that knowledge.
Right.
So especially for minorities, that's a lot of times they're first generation college, first generation graduate school, etc.
And
so
we're not afforded the same wisdom that, maybe counterparts may have in terms of, opportunities or scholarships, or even, knowing the right people to be able to get you into these, different types of scenarios.
Right. And I mean, that comes with, as I was mentioning, like if you've had doctors in your family for 3, 4, 5 generations, that's where it's who comes from. But if you're just showing up on the block, you don't have all those networks yet.
No.
So, our kids will be different because we'll be well aware of that, and it's different, but everybody has to start somewhere. So we're starting with what we have.
That's right.
We're moving forward.
That's all we can do. But I'm telling you, student loan debt is out of control.
Agreed.
So I wanted to ask you, and I'm asking this of every guest this season, is what does the Mrs. Beside mean to you?
So I think that's multifaceted. As we kind of talked about, and I feel like I've kind of touched on it a little bit as we kind of talked about, like for us and in our phase in life, for us, it means that his career is priority. And it has to be that way. But I also think that it means even though his career is priority, that doesn't mean that I have to disappear or shrink just because we have to make sure that everything is aligned for his success. Like I said, I have had the opportunities for professional growth through all of our moves in every single stage of medical school, residency. Now we're done with training and in private practice. I've had the opportunities for personal growth. I've started a blog. I make sure that I have alone time, and he is very involved when he is available. In pre-corona, I was involved in several organizations where I would have monthly, sometimes bi-weekly meetings. I went to hang out with friends for happy hours, lunch, etc. Like I go work out by myself. So I think it's kind of that balance of finding how you can support your spouse in their career and stage, but also making sure that you're not losing yourself in that process. Because again, life is an ebb and flow. So even though his career might be a priority right now, that once you get settled and kind of get in the groove of things, that's not going to be the same. So, like, what are you going to have when you get over that hump? Like,
Right.
are you going to have anything for yourself? Are you going to, like, how are you going to move forward after that hump?
Right.
So, I think that's kind of what it means for me personally.
Yeah. And remaining conscious of that too, right? Because it's so easy to get caught up in the rat race, the everyday turn of things, the quotidian nature that can be our lives, that we're not mindful of that. So I mean, I love that
Yes.
you say that if you're mindful of it, you can make intentional decisions that include you in the
Yes.
process. So I absolutely love that. Lastly, can you just tell our listeners where they can find you online, where they can read more of your wonderful blog that's already out there?
Yeah. So for the good stuff and daily shenanigans, um, you can follow me on Instagram. My username is at Tennis Shoes and Tiaras. Or for my blog, which it's just been a crazy season working from home with two small children, moving,
My goodness.
while very pregnant, etc. So I do not post as much on that, but I am coming into a new stage where I will start posting more regularly. But that is www.tennisshoesandtiaras.com. Like I said, if you are looking for daily shenanigans and nonsense, Instagram is the place to be because I keep it real. I think we are all trying to survive motherhood, or
Hmm.
even if you don't have kids, you are trying to survive womanhood.
Hmm.
um, so I am not going to have a super curated like life on social media and especially in stories. If my kid is acting crazy and I had to bribe my kid to do something, I'm going to say that I bribed my kid to listen to me.
Because
So,
that's real life. That is
right.
real life.
So, yes, follow there for the nonsense.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for being with us today, Ashley. I have enjoyed it so very much. It's always refreshing to get a chance to chat with a fellow sister. So I appreciate you and I appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me.
Of course.